Welcome to the Milton Keynes Mental Health Hour with me, John Manning from Arthur Ellis Mental Health Support. Welcome, and this week we've got a really good show. I'm really excited to welcome Andy onto the Mental Health Hour to talk about purpose. And we're talking about purpose today, what impact that can have, what sort of positive impact that can have to your mental health. And we'll be talking to Andy shortly, but in the meantime, if anyone doesn't know who Arthur Ellis is or what it is that we do, we're a team of people who are setting up an effective, meaningful therapeutic service, not just in Milton Keynes, but across the UK. So we support people, hundreds of people in Milton Keynes, as well as people in Peterborough, Cumbria, Stafford. Certainly since switching over to digital throughout the last few months, there's been a lot more people utilising our services, not just in Milton Keynes, but further afield as well. So if anyone throughout this show does want to reach out to us, realises that they might feel similar or relate to some of the subjects that we're going to cover, please do feel free to reach out to us. So welcome, Andy. Thank you very much for coming onto the show.
Sure job.
It's all right, and it's really good to have you. I'm as people might know from previous shows, I'm quite into, despite what I look like, I'm quite into exercise and fitness and stuff. But you found Strongman, which is something I've never tried before and very interested in. I remember watching Strongmen on TV. So it's a really interesting subject for me, but you went through quite a period of time before finding it. So what's your story? How did you find Strongman?
So I went through a difficult period. I'd say quite a few years ago now, and I mean I was already sort of in and amongst the gym, training and using that, I guess, as a way of sort of dealing with my issues. Sort of fast forward a few months, one of the goals I was trying to hit wasn't really coming about.
What were you kind of aiming for at that time?
I was trying to do bodybuilding, but unfortunately I like bread and carbs and sweet stuff and chocolate too much. So unfortunately the diet side of it wasn't working. But whilst I was training, obviously I was getting noticeably stronger very quickly. And obviously, like yourself, when you said you'd sort of watched Strongman at a younger age, and it's one of those things when you're at that younger age, it's like, whoa, like these guys can do some insane things.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And then, so yeah, I just Googled Strongman gyms, found one pretty local, and just sort of got into it that way, really. And things that you would sort of consider, I don't know how to put it, quite difficult. You'd look at it and go, oh, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
It was actually quite, I'm not going to say easy because it wasn't to begin with. Finding your feet in it, and understanding. I mean, it's one of those things where you're forever learning, and taking step backs all the time to readjust, and keep moving forwards. So you've got to. It's one of those things that has progressed so much over the last 10, 15 years. Sort of, you look back on TV 10, 15 years ago, and the top guys were pressing 130 kilo logs in competition,
Right.
and struggling. Nowadays, 130 kilo log is achieved quite, I wouldn't say easily, but with the right technique, right coaching, right nutrition, right recovery, it's something that is achievable.
Yeah, and there's so much that goes into all of it. It's really, it's sort of like you described it before we started as its own sort of career. and you've been doing it for about 3 years now. Is that right?
About 3 years. I
And
signed up to
what have you been able to do in that 3 years? Because from our conversation, it sounds like you've been able to. It's under 105 kilos, so that's your weight, and you've competed and you've been able to do all sorts within the field.
Yeah. I sort of naturally, there's a sort of unwritten rule of competition. So you go to a first timers or a novice. You can do a certain number of novice comps. You move up to inters once you start getting stronger, or enter a weight category. So yeah, I've done a few competitions, found out my weak points, found out my not so weak points, and just progressed really. But I really, it's something that I really, really, really want to chase down and get to a good high level at, which is, I wouldn't say unachievable, but I would definitely say that it would probably take a while to get there. Needing to hammer home everything, like I said, nutrition, getting the right recovery and getting your training right, getting everything right. So yeah, it requires a bit of dedication.
A bit.
Yeah,
that's probably a bit of an underestimation. I know as well. If anybody is watching or listening, Andy also has got a bowl of granola on the go, so you might be on occasion having some food as we go, because it is all about that fuel and everything. It's real dedication, and that's why I was really, really keen when you reached out to us to talk about purpose and understanding that, because you don't necessarily just stumble on something like Strongman. It is a dedication that you've got to sort of put your life to, and in relation to mental health, certainly throughout lockdown, throughout what we've seen with people individually or how businesses operate, because we work with corporate companies as well. A lot of people don't necessarily have a purpose, or they don't have something that truly fulfills them, or enough stuff that fulfills them day to day. And speaking to you, Andy, it was interesting to find out more about your personal background rather than Strongman, and what Strongman was able to do with your personal circumstances, how having that purpose was able to build into your life, and because it wasn't kind of by accident that you were looking for Strongman as such. It was that kind of same period of time that there were some difficulties going on in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I was constantly chasing something more, as you say, fulfilling. I've always been one who likes a challenge, and I'll put my name to a lot of things if I think I can achieve it. But getting into this one certainly was. It has created a very long path for me for what I'd like for the future as well, which is the other benefit of it. It keeps me focused, and having goals to hit, and keep moving those goalposts forward, and keeping me going in the right direction. I'm not going to say 100% that I'm spot on now, because I'm not. But if you ask my missus, if I go a week without the gym, I might get a little bit funny, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is one of those things that I am, sort of well into, but purely because and as the topic suggests, it's my purpose. And about a year or just over a year ago, part of that purpose not only became me competing in or doing Strongman, training Strongman, but wanting to help other people by getting into something like Strongman, to help them find their purpose. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey so far.
Yeah, good. And so that period of time, 3-4 years ago or so. So before, you'd always been in the gym, you'd always been involved in it, and obviously gyms are back in now. People can go to them. People can, well, people have always been able to exercise throughout lockdown, but I suppose they can exercise in the way that they're typically familiar with.
Yeah.
So what was going on back then? How did you find Strongman? What was the driver to realise? Did you know that you didn't necessarily have a purpose? Did you know that you needed to have more in your life? Like, what was going on to help you identify that?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, it was, you know, it was quite, it was a difficult time. I sort of went through this complete sort of, right, refresh, restart. It sounds more positive than it was. It wasn't that positive at the time. So, you know, I literally sort of cut everyone bar a few people out of my life, changed my phone number, and I essentially just went to work and went home, went to work and went home, and that was it.
Right.
But obviously, what come with that was obviously other things like spending my weekends literally all day in bed, just binge watching TV shows. And then you're sort of bored, so you go, right, well, I've got a fiver. I can either go get a decent meal or I can go get 4 cans of beer. So 4 cans of beer would be,
Yeah.
to help me sleep, maybe, who knows. But it was just those options at the time were, I'd rather choose something like bottles of beer, you know, to settle me into that. So I'd be happier laying in bed all day. I tried to give myself a bit of a kick up the arse. Firstly, I went and got into kickboxing first.
How long were you in that? Kind of that space of, don't want to get out of bed, I'm just going to have some beer, and you know, that repeated. I suppose it was quite a repeating day. It was just like, get up, feel groggy and horrible, go to work, start feeling a bit better throughout the day, and then not necessarily get drunk, but you know, just have a few cans to help me sleep. So
Yeah.
was that a long period of time, or was it like a week? Or
No, that definitely lasted quite a few months. I'd say anywhere between sort of 5-6 months.
right, okay,
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't ever one to go out my way to make sure I got drunk every night, but alcohol definitely was, you know, a key point of helping me settle my thoughts, so to speak.
yeah, absolutely. I definitely know what you mean.
So yeah, yeah, it lasted about 5-6 months, really. I think there was a bit of a turning point, really. I had an opportunity at work, and realised I needed to sort of sort myself out a bit, because it's quite a good opportunity. I mean, if you ask my missus, I mean, when I first met her, I was still in that kind of frame of mind as well. And obviously a lot of other things came with that as well. You know, because I'd lost a lot of weight. Because I lost a lot of weight, I wasn't really confident in myself. So because you're not confident in yourself, you're constantly second guessing everything. So yeah, it was quite a difficult time, really.
Okay. Well, and that turning point with work, is that the point where you were able to sort of, what happened with that opportunity? What did you change? What was that kind of, what adjustments did you have to make in order to look at that work opportunity?
I mean, I've always, as much as people might disagree, and I mean, I might even disagree with myself sometimes, I love working, and I said it to my missus when I met her. It's just, so I think it's the one thing that's always been instilled in me from my dad is that as long as you have a job, things will be okay, in a sense. In a number of ways, you've got a job, therefore you've got an income. But also, for me, having a job was a good distraction from, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said you wake up feeling groggy, but then you go to work and things will get better. And that's because work could be a distraction. But yeah, so basically, I got put on a course at work, which required a lot of. It was probably the most intensive course I've ever done in my life, worse than my exams at school. And it was 2 weeks of just constant learning, which I really had to sort of, pick myself up for, getting the right frame of mind for. I think having, again, it was, as I said earlier, it was about having a goal. So my goal at that point was to make sure I passed that exam. So what did I have to do to achieve that? I needed to start going to bed and sleeping properly, making sure I was eating properly, not drinking alcohol because I'd have to drive to certain places to take the exam, or do my training and whatnot. So a little bit stemmed from that, which just fed into other things really, like then going, right, let's, not use the weekend now to lay in bed. I've finished this series anyway. Let's go out and do something.
So rather than seeing it as I've finished this series, I've got to find another one, it's right, I need to go outside and do something, which is really...
Yeah, so I mean, it completely changed things. Sort of the perspective had been changed. I needed to get another focus. Although work alone wasn't enough, I needed something else, and it needed to be some form of contact sport related, involving some form of aggression, because that's always something I've used as a channel, I guess.
Yeah. So were you quite aggressive throughout that period, would you say? So that 5-6 months, maybe slightly after that as well. Were you more susceptible to like lashing out at people and having a shorter fuse?
No. I didn't want to socialise with anyone. I didn't want to be around people. But saying that, obviously, if I did have to go out and I had to socialise with people, it would result in me getting very inebriated to deal with the social situation, which then had a negative impact, such as lashing out. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you're right. Yes, it did result in that, but in an extended means of, I don't like being here. I'm not comfortable in this situation. I always feel like every eye in the room is looking at me. The only way I can deal with this now is by drinking lots of alcohol.
Yeah. And did you ever say to friends or people that you go out with in those situations, did you ever tell them that you're uncomfortable with it?
No, because I never saw it really as, I'm only explaining this now because I understand it now.
Yeah.
At that time, I didn't know that that's what my issue was. I just thought in my head, I just like to get drunk. And sort of, when you look back on it now, and I look back on it now, it was because of the social situation, because I wasn't confident in myself. I wasn't comfortable with being around people, and having to try and entertain or talk to or hold a conversation with. So it was easier if I just go, right, well, I'm just going to get absolutely trashed and make an ass of myself.
Yeah, well, with situations like that, it's really interesting because looking at there's quite a few things there that I'm really keen to talk to you about, because you said that you'd be in that repetitive day mode where you'd wake up, feel groggy from the night before, start feeling better throughout the day, and then you just do things that you think will make you feel better, but it just makes you that groggy state again in the morning.
Yeah.
And we've done a few shows on general well-being, protective factors. I don't really think we've mentioned maintenance factors a lot. I don't know if you've ever come across the term before.
I might have seen it somewhere, but I've not sort of gone digging into it now.
Yeah, well, maintenance factors are really interesting. It's kind of, and everybody has them and recognises them when they know what they are. But a maintenance factor would be those cans in the evening.
Right. Okay.
If you're in a bad situation, or if you're in you're in a low mood, or you're in that kind of period of time that you really need to break, something needs to break in order to get you out of it.
Yeah.
Maintenance factors are the behaviours that you adopt that maintain your state. So it would be things like those cans in the evening, which will make you feel groggy in the morning, and or it will be going out and socialising and getting inebriated, and then alcohol lets our inhibitions go, which in some respects is really good because we become more fun and become more engaging and all of that sort of stuff, and we're people that we might want to be if we're a little bit more confident. But at the same time, if we've got a little bit of a aggression behind us, or we're going through a bad time, then that will also come out.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and looking at what humans need as a very basic level of contact and socializing in a healthy way, learning new things, all of that sort of stuff. It's interesting how going to work, you feel better throughout the day. So you start feeling better throughout work because you are getting those different things. But that cycle is really dangerous, and I'm pleased that you were able to break it, which is good.
Yeah, it is. And I'm glad I did as well. I mean, sort of, if you want to backtrack it further, a little bit, it did land me in quite a lot of trouble, which I'm not going to go into. But yeah, it's like I said earlier, it's when you can start connecting those dots and start going, wow, that's really is helpful to see. And now, I'm not going to say I don't drink at all, but I very rarely drink. And if people sort of offer me a drink, I'll turn it down. Again, that's more to do with my training, though, rather than knowing what could be, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So to begin with, really, the purpose was the course at work, because you would have needed, partly anyway, you looking at how a purpose was able to break those maintenance factor behaviours. So like the drinking in the evening, you then had a purpose to say, I'm not going to do that because I need to wake up and drive somewhere early in the morning. So it gives you an excuse to break those behaviours. So there was the drinking that broke, and there was other things that you mentioned as well that you were thinking, right, I'm not going to do that because of my course, or
Yeah, just rather than trying to sort of stay up all night and finish every single can of beer and every single series on Netflix.
Yeah, it was your sleep.
So then it would be, right, how can I get to sleep? So yeah, it did, unfortunately. It meant I had to get to some doctors and get some assistance with that, because that was one of the things I really struggled with as well. I struggled with sleep for a very, very long time. I think I struggled with sleep for the best part of 2 years, which, you know, doesn't help things either.
And was that actually because you can either get too much or too little sleep? Like, which one for you? Was it?
I couldn't fall asleep. I would literally lay in bed all night and my mind going and going and going
Right.
and going. So again, it's that transition from, right, I'm going to have 4 cans of beer. It's going to help me go to sleep. Right, I'm going to stop drinking now, but I can't fall asleep. So what do I do here? I go to doctors and get some sleeping tablets.
Yeah.
And then after a long period of time, I don't want to be on sleeping tablets anymore. How do I now get out of this? And then I found sort of meditating a very useful way of helping find a way to fall asleep. When I really got into it, I could sort of listen to it and fall asleep whilst listening to it. That's quite funny because it goes so quiet, and then a voice comes and goes, "If you've fallen asleep, don't worry." And they're like, "Oh." It's like, well, I had, but I'm not asleep anymore now, thanks. So yeah, and that's still something I go back to. But if I do have a night where I'm struggling to fall asleep, it's like, right, bring up this, you know, tactics learned and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of.
And it's fascinating how, you know, they're all referred to as coping strategies. So if we're left alone, not every time, not to say that we're completely irresponsible as individuals or anything like that, but we turn to the things that are easy for us to access. Like, you know, I'm sure no one ever tried to stop you, you know, no one behind the counter of a garage or off license or anything. They never said, "Oh, I'm not going to serve you this because you're not using it for the right reasons." When you're buying cans or buying bottles, that's, you know, that's what people do. But it's long term. It's really bad, really,
Yeah.
really bad. So that's the coping strategy that's so easy to go to that lots of people do. But it's about finding something that's more helpful long term and a better coping strategy for you. That was meditation, which is great.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah. No.
still do that? Is that now just part of a routine, or is it something you dip in and out of?
I'll dip in and out of the app.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but for the most part, you know, the online sessions all center around one thing, and it's helping you move your mind away from overthinking. So yeah, it's still something that sometimes daily, even if it's just right, I want to fall asleep now, and I know how to do that, so I'm just going to do this. Sometimes I'll fall asleep and I'll know that I'm ready to fall asleep and I won't need it at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. But you know, if I do need to go back onto the app just to hear the bloke's subtle tones, then yeah, it's good to go back to.
And you can recognise, I suppose, when you need to do that, and you kind of you really learn how to sleep properly and stuff. It's not an easy task at all.
No, not by any means whatsoever. It took me a very, very long time to get back into a decent, I'm not going to say routine because I don't have a sleep routine, especially with my children.
Yeah.
So, but for the most part, yes, I can sort of utilise that as and when I need it. It's quite interesting actually, because I will know very quickly if I'm going to need it. If I sort of lay down, get ready to go to sleep, and start, the minute my mind goes off into something that I have no need to be thinking about it, that's when I know I'm going, right, tonight seems like it's going to be a bad night. Let's switch back into meditation mode. And, you know, it might take a bit longer, might take half hour to fall asleep, but it's still better than being up all night.
Amazing. That's so good. And so there was there was that. There's also just saying no, I suppose, if you are offered a drink, which is another really good coping strategy. Because I suppose, are you similar to an awful lot of people out there that won't just have one? It'll be I'll have one and I can justify that in my own mind, and then I've had one anyway, so I might as well have two, and then it just ends up escalating and
Because of the different feeling between 1 and 2, you might as well have another one.
yeah.
I mean, it's a mixture of both. It depends on the situation I'm in at the time. Like, I can gladly, easily sit and have 1 pint now. But I suppose the one thing that sort of affects me is my missus really mocks me for it. If I have 1 pint of beer and go to bed, I feel so dehydrated. It's horrible. I do not like it. And I'm waking up in the middle of the night, like, face all sucked in.
Wow.
Not bad. But yeah, I just don't like the idea of being hungover anymore. It doesn't interest me. And not only that, but it impacts my training. So it's all well and good to go, oh, it's Friday night, let's let our hair down and have a few drinks. But I know I'm going to be hungover till Monday. Because it does creep up on you with age, the old hangovers. And then that's 3 days of training out the window. I also don't eat when I'm hungover, so that's 3 days of eating out the window.
Yeah.
Some people are different. People love scuffing their faces with the previous night's Dominoes. I can't do that. At best, I can probably handle some really salty foods around midday, but it doesn't really help me. So, there's a lot of reasons to.
There's lots of other
not
people
wanting to.
outlets available. I think I should probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, and for anyone who's just joining us, we're talking about purpose, and Andy's had a phenomenal journey of looking at Strongman, but also looking at how that course at work was able to provide you a purpose to break those behaviours that were pretty embedded by the sounds of it. 5 or 6 months worth of waking up, staying in bed, binge watching, drinking in the evenings, and then repeating it throughout the day. And even if it's not necessarily people who are interested in Strongman in particular, even though we would like them to be, that could be really relatable to loads of other stuff. There's people who have been on furlough for months, and they might relate to those behaviours that you are in for the 5-6 months, and trying to break that now that people have got to go back into work and got to engage with the schools again, everything reopening. I think there's a lot of people who are going to be in that kind of position and could really relate to how that can, these different behaviours and what they need to do in order to break those. Because it's recognising the behaviours to begin with as well, isn't it? And did you know when you were in that 5 or 6 months that it was happening? Did you know, like, actively that this is not going to break?
The maintenance things, no, not so much, because again, it almost feels like it's the norm, and because it becomes the norm, you feel like it's just normal. You don't look at it like, well, I'm just using this as a coping mechanism and a maintenance mechanism. I had recognised that I needed to eliminate a lot of things from my life that would possibly impact on me becoming worse than I was, and which hence the reason for the phone number change, stop talking to people, because I associated that all with what I didn't want to be. But I'd gone from, right, I'm not going to talk to them anymore, I'm not going to go out with them, I'm going to sit here and do my own thing, thinking I was happy with that. But when it takes sort of 4 or 5 months and you start really going, right, clearly there's a deeper issue here, I'm not happy with this. It's eye-opening. You change one behaviour for another, thinking that's what you want, and then it takes a longer period of time to realise, no, I was just also still dealing with stuff then.
Yeah, yeah. And did you know, like, from I suppose when you were going through that course at work and finding meditation to help sleep instead, or looking at sleeping pills instead of drinking, was that all just off your own back? Did you get any support with it? What?
No, that was all off my own back. As I say, one of the things I've always been is a hard worker. And I think having that sort of instilled in me, it has slowly helped me create where I got to now. So, you know, the goalposts have been pushed so far now. It's, you know, rather than just creating a little, you know, by no means is there anything wrong with that, but just initially by creating those little goals at a time, little goal at a time, and being to where I am now, where I go, right, this is my goal now. I'm probably 2 years away from that, but it don't matter, because it's going to take me a lot of time to get there. So yeah, it's just about always having that, wanting that challenge, and to challenge myself, and just constantly moving the goalposts to, you know, achieve those challenges. And every time you achieve them, it makes you feel a little bit better about yourself, which just helps moving forwards towards the next thing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
you know,
people do tend to look at goals in that way. In 2 years' time, I want to be here, but that's quite a big. That's a gigantic task to look at where you might be in 2 years. And we've done lots of assemblies and lots of work with schools and that sort of thing, and kind of say to kids sometimes that, when you're in year 7, you have no idea what you're going to be learning in year 11. But at the same time, once you get to year 11, you would have no idea, because it's so incremental with school years. You don't really understand that you've learned so much in that period of time. You don't really engage with it. You don't recognize it, because it's those incremental little bits. And that's what we need to kind of carry on doing in our adult lives, rather than thinking, right, when I'm 30, I need to be here, or when I'm 40, I need to be there. It's just taking each day as it comes, and just sort of start little bits moving towards it. And I think that's really good about, right, I'm not going to drink because I've got to do this tomorrow. And just looking at it in that point, and being you need to be today so that you can be a little bit better tomorrow, and all that stuff. I think it's really good. So you were able to get some support from the doctors. So that was just a normal GP, I suppose, just to help you sleep. Found meditation. So you don't take sleeping tablets or anything like that anymore?
No, I don't have nothing. I just have my own mind and what I've learned from meditating, which is all I need, really.
Yeah, good. So was there any other people that supported you aside from visiting a GP at that time? Did you get any other additional support, additional help?
Yeah, I was seeing a counsellor as well. I think, it was again at that sort of, in that dark period that I did, when I was towards the end of the dark bit, but still on coming out of it. Was when obviously I met my missus, and obviously we spoke, and she said about going to seeing a counsellor, which I had. It wasn't religiously. I think I had about 6 or 7 sessions, but that for me was enough to take away what I needed to know. And that was about recognizing behaviours, understanding deep within me what has caused my mass anxiety, and how to control it going forwards. I mean, there's a couple of things that sort of still stand out, and it's one's easier to say than it is to do, and I'm sure pretty much everyone's heard of it, which is if you have no control over it, don't let it bother you.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a lot easier said than done to the mind of someone who is stressing about every single thing that could go wrong with a situation. And then there's another one that says, quite funny, so I literally said it earlier. You either say what you think and mess it up, or don't say what you think and let it mess you up instead. And it almost feels like you're trapped in a bubble. So you're like, right, well, I know I'm going to say this out loud. I'm going to say what I'm worried about out loud, but it's going to annoy someone or annoy that person. Therefore, how about I don't say it? But if I don't say it, it's going to eat me up inside. And it's just like, what do I do? What do I do about this?
And how do you do it as well? Because you can say what you're thinking in a productive way, or you can say what you're thinking in quite either an angry way or a way that isn't going to help that relationship. So it's learning about how to voice what you want to say and learning those kind of social skills. It's part of what we call it emotional literacy. So it's we never taught this in school. It's how do you other people's perspectives, look at empathy, how motivated you are. It's all of these different things, but they contribute towards your mental health. And it's how to learn those elements of how you need to do it, or how, like, areas that you might be a little bit weaker on or a little bit stronger on, and putting it across in the right way. So you learn all of that. And was it helpful?
The counsellor sessions themselves, or what
you were able to take from it?
What I was able to take from it, it's more helpful now than it was back then. Like I say, I'm in a much better place now. By all means, I still do have anxiety about a lot of things, but again, the main one creeping up overall. But I know that I have an overall outlet for it, but I also know how to deal with it in my own mind as well. I mean, it's taken the best part of 3 years to do that. So by no means is it, an easy thing to just switch off. You can't, but it's how to come to terms with it and recognise it, which I think is what has helped me the most. So if you have no control over it, don't let it bother you, I've always thought was a bit too much, because I think that's difficult to say to someone who has those thoughts, because you can't just go, oh yeah, you're right, I'll stop thinking about that. You can't do it. But yes, the whole let it mess you up or mess up the situation, that sort of as a go-to definitely helps a lot of things. It's almost like when you're younger, you're taught to think of the consequences before your actions. So it's like, right, before I say this, do I really need to say it?
Yeah, true.
Do I really need to think about it? Why am I feeling like this? Can we readjust what we're thinking? And it sounds like quite a lot, but when all what I've just said literally takes 2 seconds in the head to think about. And you can literally go through what you need to go through in a matter of seconds. Or I can anyway.
You can now, even all the time.
Yeah, no, not at all. And again, that would come in forms of lashing out, accusations, thinking things that aren't true. It's Yeah, it's a funny thing to look back on.
Yeah. And in a strange way, both of those two things work together. So if you were to say what you think a lot more, then it might increase the amount of control that you've got on situations. So there are less situations that you're unable to control or you think that you can't control because you've been able to actually voice what you think about it and
Yeah.
which is great. So how was it reaching out to somebody so your partner at the time said about reaching out to a counsellor, is that right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
How did it feel, what sort of reaching out to them in the first instance?
It wasn't great. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to admit, because it was more of a pride thing, because I'd always considered myself in my head so mentally strong that I wouldn't need these things, and what's the point in it? It's not going to sort of do anything. I already know what's wrong with me. To then 2-3 years later going, those were probably the most helpful 6 hours of my life. You know, and helped me sort of understand things a lot more. Most of it, I mean, 95% of it came from me. It was just helping to understand those things, which is the eye opener. People, I think, you know, there's a bit of a, again, like I say, it was a bit of a pride thing for me, and I think people, you know, can learn a lot more from themselves by just going on a big talking spree and just letting it all out.
Yeah.
And I understand, you know, and counsellors help point you in the right direction of where you need to be looking at, what you need to think about, and then when you get there, it clicks and it makes sense.
Yeah. And in some cases, I think people sometimes think that sessions like that, whether it's counselling or some sort of therapeutic input, is basically someone going to sit down and tell you how to live your life and tell you the do's and the don'ts and what's right and what's wrong. But it's done in a way, it's very clever, where you realise it for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the most powerful thing. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to tell someone to stop behaving in a particular way. It doesn't really work that well. They're not necessarily going to change. But if they can figure it out for themselves and realise this is all the stuff that I'm doing that's unhelpful, these are the things that I should really be focusing on, and they make that decision, then it's so much more powerful. A lot more powerful.
Definitely. So yeah, but coming away from it, and after going to the sessions, and it's a constant learning journey, and that's how I'm so open about it now as well, is because I've learned to realise, as you said, you know, earlier, the more you talk about it, the more control you have over it. So, you know, you own it at the end of the day. They're your issues. You can control it how you like. You can either talk about it openly with people, and people can sort of understand, you know, where you come from, or don't. You know, everyone's different at the end of the day, and everyone has their own ways of dealing with it. But I find mine is most helpful by just saying it out loud. You know, yes, I've got, you know, a dark period. I had a dark period in my life, where, you know, things weren't very nice. And I can gladly sit here and talk to you about those things, and not let it bother me at all. So,
and working with that counsellor, was it something that they were just looking at that period of time? Did they look at other areas of your life or other periods of time within your life? How did they kind of look at you?
I think it, you know, it went back quite far. Again, guiding me towards that, not sort of asking me as such. It was a guiding. So I'd go back and remember something from a few years ago, and when I was remembering that, it then goes back to a couple of years prior, and then I can get back to the age of about 11 years old, 12 years old, where I think a lot of my anxiety issues come from. And I think that's why I'm able to remember them, because they're clearly key points in my life that had some form of impact on the person I am today, or the person I was 5 years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So yeah, definitely, I can remember back to, and I think one of my biggest anxieties is, or my biggest anxiety is, losing people I love, or the loss of people, and feeling like everything's all right and it's stripped away.
That's a pretty understandable fear, or something to actually really be anxious about. I can really understand that. But I suppose it's how you deal with it, and whether you have got the coping strategies that tell you to go and get a load of cans and stay in bed, and or change your number and all of that sort of stuff. Which in a way you're ensuring that your fear will play out in the long run.
Yeah,
and that's where the maintenance factor thing comes in. But if you can shift it to be those more positive sides of things, then it's much more effective.
Yeah, it's almost like, it was almost like, right, we're at the end now. It's,
Yeah.
I've had enough of this thing affecting me. So here is my wall, right? And this is one big solid wall. No one anymore is going to get over this wall. I'm not going to interact with people in a way that might potentially cause me to then lose them, and I'm going to feel this way again. So that was no social media, no phone numbers, no contact with anyone. If I don't connect with someone, I can't be hurt by it, and that's that. It's that simple, and I'll just put a block on everything. So yeah, it summarizes it all, really.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So now you're into your strongman. You also help other people get into strongman as well. And even though it's called strongman, I imagine that women are involved. It's not restrictive. So if people do relate to what we've been talking about today, whether they've been on furlough, whether they're going to the gym, but it might not feel like it's something that they really want to do anymore, or that they're getting that fulfillment and that purpose from, how might somebody get involved with Strongman? What would you, how would you go about that, Andy?
Just, it doesn't take much. Obviously, in Milton Keynes, you've got Fierce Gym, which is where I'm now based at, running classes, programs, and just generally pointing people in the right direction. As you said, it's not just strong man, it's strong woman. And there's something for everyone. You don't have to walk in and be able to pick up a 200 kilo stone. You can pick up a 20 kilo stone, and that's your starting point. You don't have to want to try and do competitions. You can just come along and use it for the exercise as something you've not done before. It's not just the competing in it, that helps it all. It's, a lot of things that I've taken away from it are, being more confident in myself. So because there was as I said earlier, one of my downfalls was I lost loads of weight. So, to be in this game, I had to put weight back on. So putting weight back on made me happier in myself. It made me more confident in myself. Therefore, allowing a more positive flow of other things. So yeah, it's a good way to help, but help lots of other ways as well. If you're stressed, there's some really good, bits of equipment to use. If one of your goals is you want to lose weight, there's different bits of equipment, but it's not your normal, oh, I'm just going to go jump on a treadmill. It's, I'm going to pick up this sandbag and run up and down the hill with it. And after that, I'm then going to pick up this stone as quickly as I can 10 times. It all still gets the heart rate going. So whatever your goal is, there's a way you can hit it with Strongman. But I think a big positive to take away from it is, being able to go, look what I just done. One of those things that you'd watch on the telly and you think is impossible because only big, giant 7-foot people do it. It's not actually the case at all. And anyone can do it.
We said earlier on in the show as well about learning the techniques and even the whole industry or the whole method of strongman has improved so much over the years. So you're always learning new things as well, which is great. So if anyone does want to get in touch with you or Fierce Gyms, what's the best way that they can do that so they can explore what strongman's all about and get that direction?
Yeah, you can just go and Google Fierce Gym, same as Facebook and Instagram, or if you directly want to go to my page, it's Andy_Curtis_1. I've got a couple of workshops coming up, and if anyone is interested and likes, to meet the real big guys in real life, I think I'm pretty sure it's the 12th of September, but it is on the website. But there is a charity truck pull. All proceeds are going to Mind Charity, and Lawrence Charlet himself will be there as well. So even if you sort of want to come along for a day and just meet Lawrence Charlet, or you want to take part in pulling a truck or two, it's open to everyone.
Nice one. No,
including yourself.
Including me. All right. I'll make my way down there. That'd be good. And Fierce Gym is just in Old Wolverton as well, isn't it? So it's in Milton Keynes. It's got workshops. And what are you going to lose if you go and try and figure out if it's going to be something that's right for you?
Absolutely not.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for today, Andy. I really appreciate it. Thanks for talking us through that, being so open, and hopefully people can relate to that quite a lot, whether they're coming out of furlough, whether they are just looking for something in their life, and how those more negative behaviours that we spoke about can be broken by having a purpose. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you as well. Appreciate it.